This was the Sunday, November 5th newspaper. October 30th was when Mussolini took power. The march on Rome happened on October 28th. This is November 5th, literally a week later. And the headline says, Mussolini, hope of youth, Italy's man of tomorrow. Hard work, his creed. Okay, that's what the article says. And I am going to quote from this article, and you can see Mussolini's sort of like the sketch having been put up. We'll, of course, for the listeners, we'll put this up on Instagram as well. I love seeing articles that were in print and everything.
I have a very weird question. It says that
Mhm.
he was 38 at that time, right? During this article.
Yeah,
In that photo, he looks way older than 38. What happened to him?
Mm.
it is. I guess
Stress.
dictatorship will do that, but also we are talking about like 1920s and 1930. This is 1920s, early 1920s. Healthcare wasn't great, and he had also he had fought in World War I and everything. I mean,
Yeah.
He was
even
apparently not getting produced from the volcanic soil, it seems. It's supposed to be
oh
healthy.
my, I should have known that this would be the this is what you would be talking about.
The
But
one thing that world over Italy is famous for is the volcanic soil and the vegetables that grow there. So,
again, there
well,
was so much bombing and everything. I wonder how much of that soil also had so much of like gunpowder mixed in it after a point of time. And
that's fair.
I don't know, 1920s healthcare wasn't great. Medical advancement wasn't fantastic. So I like the life expectancy was low. And also, if you've gone to one war, I don't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
expect you're
Yeah,
going
fair.
to,
That's fair. That
You
is
know,
fair.
there
yeah.
was this article I saw where this photographer back in the day, he photographed soldiers before going to the war and after coming back from the war, and their faces had completely
I,
changed. Like they
yeah.
aged.
I know
So
what you're talking about. Yeah. Who knew that killing people had a mental health implication, that it takes a toll on you, that it is not the normal fucking thing to do? Who could have told?
No one, to be very
Fucking.
no,
honest.
Okay.
Sandy.
Before. So we are going to go to this article, which is Mussolini, Hope of Youth, Italy's Man of Tomorrow. So what this article says, right? In its introduction, it starts off this way. It says, everything is possible in Italy. The speaker was Benito Mussolini, the new Italian premier. The place was Rome. The time, just the other day. Since then, his words have become reality. He has been swept into the seats of the mighty on that overpowering wave of fascismo. Just as fascismo is a political phenomenon without parallel in history, so Mussolini a leader without political precedent. I want to pause for a second. Only an American can write this. Only an American reporter can write this, especially at that point of time. Fascism was not a political phenomenon without parallel in history. Anybody who has just remotely read about ancient Greece will tell them, right? And Mussolini was definitely not a leader without political precedent. Across across history, uh, more often than not, people came into power through conquering and not democratic elections. So it was a very standard thing to happen in history. It's only when elections started happening that this was frowned upon, right? But anyway, continuing this, he is the political phenomenon of modern Italy, rising like a flame from the ashes of her cumbersome, confusing, parasite covered bureaucratic regime, right? And this is the first paragraph, right? And the article is essentially an interview of Mussolini, but the reporter's name was Alice Rohe, writes about him in the most weirdly and uncomfortably romantic manner. It is the strangest fucking interview I have ever read. And I'm going to give some excerpts, right? It is, of course, we will
Where are you
link
getting the
this.
experts from?
There was no expert involved in this. So,
I
not
mean,
even like
you
the people who
promised
were,
us experts. So
no,
where are
not
these
even the people
experts
who were
from?
reporting. Not even people who were reporting were experts. Clearly, these are only excerpts, right? And we will, of course,
Disappointing.
link this. We will link this article in the description notes. I would highly recommend reading the entire article. This is like a week, less than a week after an insurgency in the country. Like, right? It's so crazy. Okay. So, this is a section of an interview that I'm quoting. What would be your very first step as head of the government? I asked. He answered in one word: discipline. And then I queried, discipline for everyone. That is a good beginning, he replied. What steps would you take to place Italy on a firm economic basis? How would you silence the voice of unrest, for instance, over the exchange? Work. Surely there was a challenge to new international effort in that word. Production, he continued. That is the cornerstone upon which I would build a government. And your foreign policy? I asked. Equilibrium and conciliation. This is a legitimate interview. Like, if, very honestly, if you were interviewing somebody and they responded in one word like this, would you think that this is an interview worth conducting?
I was just thinking that he basically brought out all his words of the day for the past 15 days and just used them in the interview. You know,
Correct. Fucking mean nothing, right? And about this part of the interview, what was most surprising to me is what the reporter says, right? She says, to a person who has lived long in Italy, the utterances of Mussolini were significant. She's referring to herself living for a long time in Italy, right? She continues, he seemed to put his finger on the weakest spots with a clarifying touch. Just the two words, discipline and work, spoken tersely and unemotionally, expressed volumes of understanding. A man of brevity. Did it though? Did it, express volumes of understanding? It just seems like neither of you knew what you were talking about.
I think what he understood was that the reporter was extremely annoying. I think that's also why he didn't want to answer them. I don't know whether that's a man or a woman. I'm assuming it's a man because of the times.
Woman,
It's a
no,
woman.
woman, Alice Yu. Yeah.
Ah,
Woman,
okay.
and I mean, by the end of the interview, we'll get to this part also. By the end of the interview, Mussolini also was like, he was so surprised. He was like, for a woman, you have political understanding. Fucking horrible man in every way possible. And anyway, this is how she talks about the interview, right? Another excerpt. Looking at Mussolini, I saw him as the real leader of Italy, and his story came to mind. The man of iron, who, despite almost fatal wounds received in the war, shows no trace of physical weakness, had a most extraordinary background for the premiership of Italy. Mussolini was born in Romagna in 1884. You must not forget that my father was an ironmonger, he informed me when talking of his past. I just want to pause for a second here. This sentence has no context to what came before and is never referred to again later. I don't know why Mussolini found it important to inform her that his father was an ironmonger, and I do not know why later why she felt it was important to put in this without talking about anything related to his
Or
father,
it could be
right?
the editor also. The editor could have just removed the context so as to, because during those days they used to set the articles in slots,
Yeah,
right?
space. Yeah,
The
you had
space wise.
space.
So
Yeah,
maybe someone deleted a couple of paragraphs here and there just to ensure that it fits into the right space there. I mean, we can speculate all we want. Like all of this could be
possible.
true. Nothing of this could be true. So we don't really
Possible.
know.
I'm just going to assume incompetence on everybody's part. Because the rest of the article is also written badly. So it's also the reporter doing her job quite badly. But anyway,
I'm
she
also
continues.
assuming she's Italian, the reporter.
No, she's American. She's an American correspondent in Italy. She's writing, this is the New York Times. She's writing for New York Times. So she continues, Mussolini is one of the most, oh God, Mussolini is one of the most cultured men in Italy. But he gleaned his knowledge at no age-dried founts of learning. In his early years, he began an intellectual vagabondage, which has given him an international erudition. He knows many languages, having worked at jobs of all sorts to finance himself while he studied the literature of other lands in their native tongues. From his intellectual vagabondage, he would often return to his home in Romagna, where, shut off from the world, he would give himself over to veritable debauches of study. At times, he taught French, and always he wrote. His short stories are bitter and cynical, the fruit of his wanderings. Many-sided personality. It is the oddest fucking praise that I have seen. Like it's a very, very weird way to praise somebody. And all of this within like a week of marching and illegally occupying a country, the governance of a country. Also, with Mussolini convinced that the woman with political understanding was an impossibility. Like he literally says that to his face, right? Like he says that for for a woman, you are highly educated and you understand political nuances a lot. And she says, do you think a woman, being given the same opportunities and education cannot have this political understanding? He's like, no, of course not. It's an impossibility. Okay. Despite that, she writes this article, like, have some sense of pride, if not responsibility. Right? Not even that. Okay. So this was a week after March to Rome. Now, November 12th, 1922, that is less than 2 weeks after Mussolini took power, right? And again, this is again the New York Times, because very honestly, the easiest to find. I want to give a caveat here. Not a caveat, I just want to inform something. New York Times was not the only terrible coverage. Like New York Times was not the only publication doing a fuck all job of journalism. Most mainstream media was, right? New York Times just has a better record kept, right? So from this November 12th article, a very short article, but I'm giving like the introduction. It says, Benito Mussolini, the new Italian president of the council, in keeping with the character of the man and of the revolution which he created, inspired and made successful, took over the portfolios of interior and of foreign affairs. He has made a good beginning in each. The article goes on to describe what Mussolini will be doing in terms of firing the older diplomats and reform plans, etc., completely ignoring the coup that he held, right? My problem with this kind of reporting is this very clearly shows how not neutral media has always been. If you are talking about what he is doing, how he is going to take over he has taken over 2 ministries, he's taken over 2 portfolios, right? He's going to put that in place. Talk about his, reform plans without saying he has made a good beginning in each. What are you doing? What? It's not neutral, right? And it is informing people's opinions, right? With the opinions that they have. And it's easy. I'm also bringing this caveat. It is easy to sit here and because we have the political inclination of what we do, and because we know what Mussolini went on to do and what Hitler went on to do, that we can call these media articles absolutely nonsense. And that's also what I want to do because they were nonsense. But I also want you all and the listeners to remember that it's the fact that even if you look at movements that you might have been in favor of, the media would have been biased at that point of time also, whether for it or against it, depends on what your beliefs are and what their beliefs are, but always very subjective, right? There was nothing known as objective reporting. It doesn't exist because we are people, and human beings have come from a subjective, like we all have a subjective viewpoint. There's no objective viewpoint, right? It doesn't exist, right? Now, this was what papers like New York Times saying. There, on the other end, there were papers like the New Yorker and the New York Herald that were apparently more critical of Mussolini. I found only articles and reports mentioning that they were critical. I could not find their digital archives, so I don't know what those articles said, but they said that they were critical, right, of Mussolini. So there were some niche publications and reporters who were questioning why everybody was so happy with a tyrant. But overall, the global media was far too happy praising Mussolini's defeat of, socialism and communism, right? And that's what the direction was. And this was what the American media was primarily talking about.